government surplus hurts. Surpluses are often touted as a government's finest economic achievement, an ironclad demonstration of superior economic management. But what is so good about a surplus? A government surplus occurs when the government collects more money than it spends. The other side of that equation is that the private sector, everyone but the government, has less money because the government has taken more back out than it put in. By definition, a government surplus is a deficit for the rest of us. If a government spends $5 billion, then in the same financial year collects taxes and other revenue of $7 billion, they will have run a surplus of $2 billion. Say the private sector started that period with $10 billion. It will have gained $5 billion from the government spending to make $15 billion, but then given $7 billion in taxes and other charges to the government and been left with $8 billion. The private sector is now $2 billion poorer because of the government surplus. Let's go back to the start and try that again with one difference. This time, the government spends $8 billion rather than $5. Then they collect the same amount as before, $7 billion. The government has now run a deficit of $1 billion. The private sector, starting with the same $10 billion as last time, gains $8 billion from the government spending, taking it to $18 billion. Then the government collects its $7 billion in revenue, leaving the private sector with $11 billion, $1 billion better off than it started. The government deficit has contributed $1 billion more into the hands of businesses and households. A government deficit is the same thing as a surplus for the private sector. Which entities in the private sector end up with that extra money is, of course, a whole other issue. There are other ways for the total amount of money in private hands to change up or down, but a government surplus will always mean that there is less money in private pockets than there would have been with a government deficit. There are sometimes reasons for a government to run a surplus, such as slowing down economic activity for reasons of financial stability, but the belief that it is a good idea to run one whenever you can is a fairy tale. In fact, periods of repeated government surplus are generally followed by recessions and even depressions. Less government spending leads to reduced economic activity and the total economy slowing down. In the USA, every period of continued surpluses has been followed by negative economic growth, including all 6 depressions in US history. In Australia, since the dollar was adopted, we've had 3 periods of consistent surpluses. The first led up to the 1991 recession, the second was followed by the global financial crisis, also known as the Great Recession, and the third ushered in the per capita recessions in 2018 and 19. The important thing to remember is that a national currency issuing government's budget isn't like a business or household budget. They don't need to save up for things or have a rainy day fund in case of unexpected costs. A currency issuer can always pay its debts and buy anything for sale in its own currency and can never go bankrupt. A government in surplus isn't building a nest egg, it's reducing the amount everyone else has to play with. A government surplus isn't necessarily a good thing, and it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Anyone saying that we should always want a surplus either doesn't understand or is trying to trick you. What you can be sure of is that a government surplus means less money in the hands of people and businesses than if it ran a deficit. Subscribe for more videos from Pegs.